We have a pitcher that the Padres are interested in. Padres rumor. Now, we've talked about this before. I think actually as recently, maybe it's yesterday at 5:45. Michael Lorenzen. We've talked about his name. Midseason acquisition last year. The Phillies threw a lot of innings last year. Pitched a no-hitter last year for the Phillies. Had a solid year. I wouldn't say it was an amazing year. 4.1 ERA, 150-something innings. Solid year. The Padres reportedly have interest in Michael Lorenzen. This is like the most activity around anything Padres related now in weeks, Jim. And I'm not even kidding. I mean, since the signings of like Matsui and Go, it's been radio silent.
Like nothing. Now, last year, we talked about the numbers a little bit yesterday. Yep. And you said, you look at those numbers just on face value, sign me up.
Yeah, good year.
They need pitching. That guy, for sure. And if you break it down a little more, he was actually really, really good last year up until his no-hitter. Like, after the no-hitter,
is that right?
It was really bad.
And he threw a lot of pitches, didn't he?
He threw, I think, 124.
Something. Okay, that's
120 something.
Yep.
But the numbers before his no-hitter.
Yep.
All right. He had a 3.23 ERA.
I like
and a 2.17 opponent. I can't even speak. Opponent batting average in 20 starts.
Okay.
Through the no-hitter. So that's with the no-hitter included. All right.
So we have like a 5 on the other side.
After the no-hitter, all right, he had an 8 ERA.
What?
And with 30 plus innings to finish this season.
Really?
Yeah. It was and that's what we've seen in baseball nowadays. If a guy's not used to throwing that many pitches, and they go that, like, look, obviously Michael Lorenzen, I'm sure he's not going to say, man, I wish I didn't throw that no-hitter so I could have had a better ERA last year. Like, you're going to want to throw the no-hitter. If I'm Michael Lorenzen, I want to throw the no-hitter. But you also can kind of correlate the end of his season struggles to the no-hitter and probably the amount of pitches he threw, because pitchers these days just aren't used to throwing that many pitches.
So, but here's my question. So was this, I don't know if I haven't fully read up on this, and that was some very good insight from you. You must have been doing all kinds of reading while you were numb in that chair.
I actually was like gagging and wanting to throw up, but anyway.
But, so here's my question. Was he hurt or was it fatigue?
Well,
this is a big difference. Is it, if he was hurt, is he healthy? Or was he just fatigued?
He didn't go on the IL.
Okay.
Not that, I mean, he may have. I don't know.
He only made 11 appearances with the Phillies, 7 starts. That's a little short. I don't know either.
If I'm going to be the guy, I'll be the he was fatigued guy, because I want to believe that if the Padres do end up signing him,
right?
If the Padres end up signing him, then I will be he was just fatigued last year guy, because that's what I want to believe. Because I think it's easy to correlate. All right, after the no-hitter, he was tired. The 124 is something he's never done before, I don't think.
Yeah.
You look at his innings, most innings he's pitched in his entire career last year. Okay. That, to me, I'm okay with. I would be fine with, and then there's going to be like more digging here to know the true reason why he may have had, fatigue issues, or if he was actually injured, or whatever the case may be. But before the no-hitter, man, he was great.
Here's what I like. He's one of these guys that hasn't primarily been a starter in his career, but got built up last year by starting a lot. And because of that, because he's not a 3 or 5 year starter, do I get him a little bit out of value? Because he hasn't proven he can start consistently in the big leagues. Here's the other thing I like. He spent 7 years pitching for the Cincinnati Reds, as good of a hitter's yard as there is in the country outside of Coors Field, which is at a mile of elevation, right? His career ERA in 7 seasons in Cincinnati, that bandbox of a ballpark, was 4.07. Take a run off that thing.
That's good.
At Petco Park.
That's good.
No joke. You can take
throw him with Niebla.
That's yes. Pitching whisperer. Guy hasn't started his whole career. Maybe you get him a little bit out of value because of that. Coming off a bad couple of weeks to finish the season. Again, I don't know what the cost is going to be, but I do know this. They have to finish off this rotation, have a realistic shot in 2024. What other options do you have other than just, sometimes you got to buy the thing even if you don't have the money to do it. Like, this is the one thing you kind of have to buy. I really believe that. They've got 3 legitimate starters. You need more than that. And how are they going to find it?
If you want to go into the season and have Matt Waldron and Pedro Avila be your 4 and 5 starters, you're probably asking for it, to be honest with you. Not saying that those guys wouldn't be any good, but I think if you're asking them to make 25 to 30 starts, then you're really, I mean, Waldron and Avila, if you told me next year, both of those guys each made between 10 and 15 or 10 and 12 starts each, I'd feel okay with that. But if you told me that next year those guys make between 25 and 28 starts, I'd be like, okay, that's a problem. And who even knows if those guys would be built up to make that many starts in the first place? Because they've never done it before in their entire career. So you need more pitching. And I think if the Padres are okay with the struggles at the end of the year for Michael Lorenzen and can chalk it up to fatigue after his no-hitter and then look at the start of his season up until that no-hitter and say that's more or less the guy that we would be getting rather than the guy that was at the end of the year that had 8 ERA, then I think it's definitely something that I would do. Just again, the question mark is, all right, what's the money cost going to be? Because is he going to want a multiple year deal or can you get him on a 1 year deal? If you can get him on a 1 year deal for $10 million, then yeah, sign me up. But if he's asking for a multiple year deal, like $14 million a year, because that feels like the going rate for any pitcher nowadays, then I would probably look elsewhere.
So to your point, a year ago, before he had ever been a primary starter in the big leagues, he got $8.5 million. Kind of that like Lugo, Waka, go prove something to me. We're not going to give you a fortune, but it's still decent. But now that he's started, I mean, how many starts did he make last year? A good amount, 20 plus. And he threw 150 innings. I mean, I think now that he has started, he made 25 starts last year. That 8.5 is going up at least 3-4 million. So now you're in that 11, 12.
10, 11.
Yeah.
For 1 year.
Yeah, exactly. It's like we've said this. You can't do better than that unless you're finding a pitcher that wasn't a starter last year. But if you're going with a pitcher that wasn't a starter last year, you all of a sudden run into innings restrictions, which happened with the Padres a year ago. So maybe it's an inning restriction guy coupled with Avila or coupled with Waldron.
Right.
But I mean, it's nice to know they're at least having interest in someone. To be honest with you, because it's been like they've been a ghost. They really have.
At least Preller's phone is on and potentially working.
Yeah, I mean, there's other teams, I guess, that have interest. Baltimore is one of them. The Twins were in potentially on Lorenzen, but now they're not because they made a trade. Like this is all of a sudden, and Preller said, like, we'll see if we can get some value in January. You got 36 hours in January.
Yeah.
And your pitchers and catchers report in a week and a half. And you're playing spring training games. Like now I'm on Team Jim here. You're playing spring training games in 3 weeks, and like you do have work to do. It's just a weird dynamic that's playing out because you're so quiet. It's one thing if you're making minor move after minor move. You're making no moves.
No moves. None. You're not trading for anybody. You have massive holes. We said it last week in Kevin's article about the upcoming, season. The Padres right now have the least amount of players on their active 40-man roster of any team in baseball.
What'd you say it was?
35.
Okay.
The next behind that, I think, is 36 or 37.
You said Atlanta had 36. One more, whatever the
Atlanta, I think, had 36 or 37. But they don't have the holes that the Padres have. I'm sure that the final 4 roster spots for the Atlanta Braves are going to be like minor league guys. They're not like, hey, it's our left fielder, or hey, one of the final spots will be our starting center fielder.
That's a good point.
Good point. It's why it's different with the Padres. Is the Padres remaining 5 roster spots on their roster are more than likely going to be starters for your major league club.
Yeah, at least a few of them.
So that's why it's different than the Braves or any other team that might have like 38 men on their active 40-man or 39 on their active 40-man, looking to fill one more roster spot. Like, they're probably going to fill that roster spot with a minor league guy that in case of an injury, they have him down in the minors ready to go. The Padres are looking for starters, left field, center field, right? Potentially first base, bench, another starter. They don't have these roster spots that they're going to fill with minor league guys that are going to be put in the minors in case of injuries to somebody that's going to be called up. They need starters.
Well, here's the thing. If there's any good news here is that they massively missed the mark a year ago. And there's this idea that like it should just automatically be better than that because how on earth did last year occur? Now, they don't have the same team as last year. Maybe that's a good thing They're also in as tough of a division as you could possibly imagine. I mean, with Arizona getting to a World Series, with the way the Dodgers spent, the way the Giants are so motivated to spend, and with a manager that's not going to be there for a decade, and they're trying to win now with.
Well, they're not spending any money, actually.
Well, they've spent more than the. I mean, they spent on Jung Hoo. They spent $100 million. That might be
besides Jung Hoo Lee. What do they have?
Okay, but that's one more significant addition than the Padres made, and those two teams were identical last year, essentially, between the Giants and the Padres. And the Padres have lost Juan Soto and others. It's just the division makes it tough. What doesn't make it as tough is there's multiple teams that get in via the wild card, and like these players can't be like you got to think that there's like a return to the mean for someone like a Musgrove, a Darvish, a Machado, a Bogarts. That's got to be your hope.
Yeah, and I think it's going to be really hard for fans, and it's going to be hard for us too, to try and view this season potentially as like a transition year of we're going to like take a step back, regroup, and then make another push next year. Like, and that's going to be
say that.
I know they won't.
But if they do, see, that's the thing. If they say, hey, we're a playoff team.
I know. Then the expectations are going to be playoffs. And if they miss the playoffs, then we're going to destroy them.
But to your point is if they say it, but the moves are, hey, Marcy made the opening day roster, and hey, Avila and Waldron are in your rotation to start the year. It's like, yeah, your actions. Hold on. You say you can win the division.
Yeah.
But you've lost a lot of pieces from last year and you didn't win the. Yeah, that's what I'm saying. I almost think it's a hard spot. Like if I'm Eric Etzenda, who even knows what Eric Etzenda is thinking? But it's a hard spot because if you overpromise here, hey, we think we've doubled down, we're going to be better, and we're going to win a World Series at some point. Well, hold on.
Yeah,
you know, like but if you say, hey, we're going to rebuild in 2025, it's going to be great. People are like, what do you mean you're rebuilding?
Well, they're not going to say that. We know that. But whenever it's reported by Dennis or Kevin, that the intentions of the organization is to have this be a developmental / transition year to where they can regroup and make sure that they get all their money issues in order, right? And they have the books be, in the green instead of in the red. And then next offseason, that's when they can maybe make a couple moves to help next year's club. But I don't know if that's going to fly with fans. I really don't. I mean, some might because some actually only care about the minor league system. They might love seeing Jacob Marcy out there and Jackson Merrill, even if they don't perform. And if they do perform, then that's great. But you're running a big risk here coming off of last year's debacle and 2021's debacle and their third manager in 4 years. Third manager in 4 years. And if you miss out this year,
well, then everything changes.
But then how can they do that when internally they're talking about, guys, this is a developmental transition year for us? Then how are you going to fire people and make changes when that's like the organization's thought process?
Jim tells me we have another Padres rumor. Earlier today, Michael Lorenzen, we found out the Padres reportedly are in on Michael Lorenzen. We've given you that name a couple of times. Yeah. What's the latest here?
Shout out to James for sending this our way. According to Robert Murray, he is reporting that the Padres are interested in Eric Lauer, former
Padres first-round pick?
Former Padres starter, Eric Lauer.
Wasn't he a first-round pick?
That would be correct.
I think so.
Yeah.
That's how I remember it.
And you might remember him as being, I guess, quote, the Dodger killer because he always pitched well against the Dodgers, like every single time.
Yeah.
Then he went to Milwaukee, and the last 2 years, 2022, 2021, well, two of the last 3 years, excuse me, really good. Like, really good.
Yeah, but there's a catch, right?
He was really bad last year.
Well, why did he only appear in 10 games? So he was clearly
injured. Yeah.
He had a 6.56. This is the problem. Everyone we're telling you about, who did we tell you about before with the Blue Jays? Manoah, 6 ERA.
Alec Manoah, yeah.
Lauer, 6 ERA. Lorenzen, final 2 months, 8 ERA.
Yeah.
You know, like there's a catch on all these players. Now, would he come cheap? Yeah, he's a free agent now, right? He's not even, so he's a free agent. I mean, clearly he's not. I think he's doing some type of tryout, isn't he? He's pitching in front of teams, so he's not some highly
same thing with Rio, right? Because he's coming off of Tommy John surgery.
So he made $5 million last year and was awful. So he's not getting more than a handful of million.
So give him $2 million. They have no left. They currently have no left-handed starting pitchers in their rotation as of right now.
True. I mean, are you even willing to give him like a major league contract? Or is he more of like one of these guys you bring in to camp,
like
a non-roster invitee, and see if you can make the team? And if you do, you make $2
million.
a
Cole Hamels deal like last year.
Yeah, exactly.
We never saw Cole Hamels.
And by the way, wasn't he critical of the Padres organization when he was having success with Milwaukee a couple of years ago, and critical of AJ Preller?
Ripped him.
Be careful what bridges you burn, by the way.
That is true.
You're always a year away from a 6.56 ERA.
Yep, and being out of the league and not having any offers. But I mean, it's another name that's out there. It's not a sexy name. It's not a name that excites you, and it is. It's like whatever.
Rank the names: Manoah, Lorenzen, Lauer.
I would go Lorenzen, Manoah, Lauer.
I'd go Manoah, Lorenzen, Lauer.
The reason why I go Lorenzen is because he has success. He had success last year.
Mm-hmm.
And
Manoah didn't.
Manoah didn't. And I'd be a little afraid that if I were the Padres, we couldn't get Manoah back to that point from 2 years ago.
True. And you might have to give up something real to go get a pitcher in his prime coming off a down year.
And with Lorenzen, I think you could build off of last year.
No, that's a good argument.
Even with the 8 ERA in the final 30 innings of his season.
I would say all things equal, I'm taking Manoah, but they're not, because you got to go trade for Manoah where Lorenzen's available as a free agent.
Where would you put Ryu in there?
Yeah, that's a good point.
Coming off an injury, I don't know if I'd put him. I'd put him maybe third, fourth.
I'd have to do a deeper dive if I'm being honest. I mean, he had a 3.4 ERA last year, but that was only 11 games because he was hurt.
And he got injured.
Yeah. To your point, I just don't know about his health. So he's been an effective pitcher, but I just don't know about his health.
He could be a cheap option,
mm-hmm.
But what if he's not ready? And what if he remains injured? And what if it turns out to be a bust where you're getting a guy that you're having a lot of risk here and you're hoping that he stays healthy, but he's coming off a pretty major injury.
You know what he made last year?
No, I don't.
20.
Wow.
Now he's coming off major injury, like you said, so he's not getting anywhere near that. But again, all these names have such huge question marks attached to them that I'd probably go with the lowest risk. Like, to your point, like if I can bring Lauer in on a minor league deal, and then if he makes the team, I pay him a couple of $1 million. Okay. If I can bring Lorenzen in for cheap, I think I'm going like, what costs me the least to attempt to accomplish? Or do I want to go move heaven and earth to go get Alek Manoah off a down year in Toronto? You know, giving up a top 10 prospect for a guy that has 6 ERA, is that a good sell?
And maybe they don't get any of these pitchers.
They may not, but they may. They may. Out of the 4 we just mentioned, they could absolutely land one.
Yeah, I mean, Lorenzen his last, let's look here, 4 years. I mean, nothing special.
Mm-hmm.
And last year was his first time as a starter.
Right.
Like full-time starter. I mean, maybe he made 18 starts in 2022 with the Angels. 4.24 ERA. Not great. Last year was his best year. 4.18 in 25 starts. And then before that, I mean, he's just a reliever, you know? Like, he had a couple good years in Cincinnati as a reliever, but you'd almost sign him hoping that he would be like a Seth Lugo type, a guy that has been a reliever most of his career, now transitioning to be a starter and have success like he did last year. There's risk everywhere. There's not one surefire like home run hit for the price that you would pay or willing to pay on any of these guys. I would just look at Lorenzen and say, I take him over any of the other ones just because he has the most recent success.
My heaven and earth guy, if we're doing the heaven and earth game, which they're not moving, by the way, from Manoah. But if I am going to move heaven and earth, and I'm not trading the Salases or the Merrills, everyone relax. But it's Jesus Luzardo, who put together a complete season last year for Miami. Yes, it's a very good pitcher's yard, but 180 innings and a 3.5 ERA and 30 starts is a complete season. And he's 26 years of age. Like, if I'm really trying to get someone that's impactful for my rotation, as opposed to dumpster diving, that's the thing you got to ask yourself. Do you really want to make a move here, a top half of rotation move, or do you just want to bring in guys like Eric Lauer?
Well, then you're going to have to give up a top prospect.
Correct.
I mean, are you willing to
Or he's part of like the Kim deal, which again, we're not proponents of, but if Kim's going to move and now all of a sudden Luzardo's available and it's need for need type moves.
Honestly, if you're the Marlins, it would not be. I wouldn't be shocked if you're the Padres and they ask for Jackson Merrill. Like that, this type of player right here.
26,
controlled till 2027.
Right. So 3 years, 4, 5, 6.
Yes. Lefties out there are hard to find. And he had a fantastic year last year. 178 innings pitched. I think that might have led the Padres because I don't think Snell pitched that many innings.
I think you're right. Yeah. 208 strikeouts for a lefty and 178 innings.
30 plus starts for you. His last 2, he's getting better and better.
Yep.
Yeah. You want Jesus Luzardo? Guess what? You're going to probably have to give up Jackson Merrill. And are you willing to do that? I don't think the Padres are because it's burned them in the past every single time.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that Preller is right now, like we said, he'd rather just keep all his prospects and see what happens than trying to win and make these type of moves for the active major league club now. He'd rather just stock up on the farm system.
877-767-4760. Our Aztecs countdown to tip-off begins at 5:30. San Diego State, Colorado State at 6:10 from Fort Collins. Big game. Ted Leitner on the call. Let's go to Dave on line 2. Dave, thanks for calling in. You're on with Jon and Jim.
Hey, man, go Aztecs.
There you
go. Got to get this one tonight.
Yep.
Look, first of all, this is a stunning conversation that we're having today about where the Padres are really at.
Mm-hmm.
By any objective analysis, no matter what they do at this point, they're not going to the World Series with this lineup. I mean, they look what they had last year and they couldn't do it. So you're telling me now that the price is Jackson is Merrill, and it'd be fine if you were one piece away. They're not. They're like 10 pieces away for all intents and purposes. So, call it what you want. You call it a rebuild, reload, whatever you want to call it. That's where they're at this point. Judging by their non-moves or inability to make the moves, this is where we're at. And, it's acceptance time. This is what it is. Short of a miracle season by their big 3 guys that are left, and short of a miracle season with you, Darvish, and Joe, there's not much left there in the cupboard.
Dave, appreciate the call. I mean, listen, I'm not going to put it as bluntly as that today.
Me neither, no.
But some of the points are legitimate points. I mean, are they going to go to the World Series with everything that's transpired here? We don't know.
We'll know that.
But
I'm not going to say
from
that,
a fan perspective, I understand someone going down that path.
Yeah, no.
Like I'm not, of course not. It's January. And we've seen crazy seasons.
Dude, with everything that's happened the last couple years in the playoffs.
I agree with you.
There is no way I can say this team's not going to the World Series because I just personally can't say that. I understand it from a fan's perspective.
I understand
for sure. But when you see the 84 win Diamondbacks make the World Series this past year, like
Phillies,
86 wins, like a team that wins 85 games can make the World Series.
It can.
Absolutely.
Or a team that wins 115 can. I mean, we haven't seen it as much recently here in the National League.
But what I will agree with there on Dave's point is if you expect to have a good season and if you want to have a good season, you're going to need close to almost everything to go right for you. You can't have any major injuries. You can't have guys having like severe down years like last year.
Mm-hmm.
You're going to need Joe and you to pitch like a 1-2. And you're going to need Michael King to emerge and be that steady hand in the rotation, right? Give you 28 starts, give you 140 to 160 innings. You're going to need that. And you're also going to need Manny and Xander to have way better years than they did last year. And you're also going to need Tatis to perform at the plate like Tatis of 2021. If all of those things happen, and by the way, you still need Ha-Seong Kim to perform like he did last year for a full season as well. And probably need Jake Cronenworth to do better than a 670 OPS. If all those things happen, then they have a good chance. But the likelihood of like every single one of those things happening is low. It just is because we haven't seen that happen. And when we did see it happen in 2022, the team had a way better roster.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with everything you said. And honestly, I don't disagree with Dave, but I also don't agree with him. As in, how can anyone say January 30th the way it's going to play out? I mean, we can't pencil the Dodgers in just like we can't pencil the Padres out. Do I think the Dodgers have a better chance than the Padres? Well, yeah, I'd be an idiot to say otherwise. But even Dan Zimborski, Fangraphs, who joined us like 2 weeks ago, was like, there's a 15% chance the Dodgers don't even win the division.
Yeah.
Forget about the World Series. So it'll play out on field. It seems like a lot is stacked against the Padres. But then again, we're forgetting about, like you said, the other side of the coin is like they've got legitimate players in their prime that are capable of performing. They just didn't do it last year. Now they got to do it.
They have to do it. It's like almost has to have it situation. You have to perform. You have to stay healthy. You can't have Machado missing a month and a half. You can't have Xander missing time. Like, you just can't have your big names missing time, and you need them all to perform. Because if they don't, it's just going to make it that much harder. The margin for error for this team, I thought the margin for error for last year's team was going to be, if one player doesn't perform, then they could just pick up the slack here and there. But it just was a team-wide failure. They quit at times.
Mm-hmm.
The manager had issues with the general manager. It bled into that clubhouse.
Yeah.
No leadership, none of that, right? It was just bad all around.
Mm-hmm.
And injuries too. I don't think the team got decimated by injuries, but there were key injuries that hurt the team.
Right.
Like this year, the margin for error is so thin. You lose Darvish for a month and a half, that's a problem. You lose Musgrove for as much time as he missed last year for any time this year. That's a problem. So with the way that this roster is constructed, can they still win? Absolutely. Can they still make the postseason? Absolutely. You just can't have any of these big bumps in the road or injuries or down years from your main guys.
Right. And do I envision Eric Lauer on the mound in the postseason? No, probably not. I don't know if Alek Manoah would be on the mound in the post. But nobody really knows because they could be. Like, again, today, you don't envision the Manoahs, the Lorenzens, the Lauers being impactful. And then all of a sudden they are, because there have been Preller signings, scrap heap type moves that have paid dividends. And there have been other moves that haven't. I mean, there have been some really bad, even some of the small deals. The Matt Carpenter reach was an overreach, but he's also, yes, if we're going to be critical of moves like that, he's also gotten guys on the cheap that have contributed, like Michael Wacha, Seth Lugo, relievers, closers, etc.
And to Eno Sarris's article the other day about the stuff-wise in baseball, and the Padres have 3 pitchers on that list.
Top 35,
King, Darvish, and Musgrove. Like the dream scenario, and I could see it happening. I'm not saying it's like it won't happen.
Yeah.
So I'm choking on
myself. Getting choked up. It's emotional.
It is emotional.
Talking about stuff plus.
Yeah. It's easy to envision, I think, Darvish, Musgrove, and King being like exactly how Eno Sarris says, 3 of the top guys in baseball, 3 of the top 35 pitchers in baseball, and you get to a postseason series and you have 3 legitimate starters. That's a good starting point. And I think that's what the Padres are banking on, is those 3 guys are going to be our top 3 guys and perform at a level that will help carry this team.
Formula that's beaten the Dodgers the last 2 years is better starting pitching than the Dodgers have had in that series.
Yeah.
So the Padres had 2 years ago. It's what the Diamondbacks had last year.
But they have to perform at like a top level. Like, you need to have at least one of those guys be an all-star and pitch 175 innings. Right. Like, you need to perform.
And top 35, I didn't read this. Like, was one of these guys 9th, or were these guys 27th, 31st, 35th?
Still, 3 of the top 35.
Agreed, you take it. I agree with you. But again, do they have that high-level frontline top 5 starter in baseball heading into the year? We'll see.